Hello, my friends. So, I hope you all are having a fantastic summer so far. And I know before we left, we didn't quite finish reading Bat and the End of Everything. So, I wanted to make sure that we could finish that because we did such a great job this year reading A Boy Called Bat in that series. So, I want to make sure you got to hear the end and find out what exactly happens to Thor and Bat and see if they end up together or see what happens when Bat releases Thor in the wild. So, I wanted to read the next few chapters for you. We are on chapter 20 right now, A Hot, Sweaty Day. And just to kind of talk about what we've read so far, we left off with, so remember, Israel is in Canada for the summer. And so Jenny is taking care of the bunny baby cakes. And Bat is home and he kind of misses Israel, but Israel sent Bat a really sweet letter, and Jenny and Janie ended up helping Bat respond to Israel with another letter. And Bat asked him how the weather was in Canada, if he's homesick, and he also asks if Israel wants to have a sleepover with Bat when he gets home. So we are on chapter 20, A Hot, Sweaty Day. Sometimes Bat had a hard day. If he had a hard day in Mr. Grayson's class, Bat would cuddle baby cakes even if it was time for science or reading circle, thanks to Mr. Grayson's open door baby cakes policy. So remember, the open door baby cakes policy means that anybody can go in and see baby cakes when they need time for themselves or time to calm down. Wednesday was a hard day. Mom had the afternoon off work, but she had to spend the whole time running errands. Because Janie was at the pool again with some friends, Bat had to run the errands too. The air conditioning in the car was not working properly. All week it had taken way too long for the car to cool. It was so hot that they had to roll down all 4 windows, which Bat hated because it made a really loud noise and it blew his hair all around. "Put on your hat," Mom suggested, looking at Bat in the rearview mirror. Bat took the baseball cap Dad had given him from the pocket in the back of Mom's seat and put it on. It helped with the hair, but not with the sound. And then there were the lines. Everywhere they went, the hardware store, the grocery store, the dry cleaners, it was waiting and waiting and more waiting. And each time they came out of one place to drive to the next place, the car was even hotter. Bat's t-shirt stuck to his back with sweat. His socks felt too tight around his ankles. The hat was making his head itch, but when he took it off, the wind blew his hair and so he put it back on. "I'm really sorry, Bat, but we have to make one more stop," Mom said as she checked her phone after they left the dry cleaners. "We just have to swing by the pool and pick up Janie." "I thought she was getting a ride home with Ezra," Bat said. He knew his voice sounded whiny, but he couldn't make it sound different. "That's what I thought too, but she sent me a message that she's ready to come home now," Mom said. She laid the dry cleaning in the back of the station wagon next to the groceries and the bag with light bulbs and batteries from the hardware store. Bat groaned and climbed reluctantly into the back seat. "Can't she walk home?" "Bat," said Mom. "No, it's too far for her to walk." "Then she should wait for Ezra's mom," Bat whined. "I know you're frustrated and ready to go home," Mom said, "but we're going to pick her up. If you needed to come home from something early, Janie and I would pick you up. That's the way we do things." So after all those errands, they had to drive all the way across town to the pool. And in the meantime, Bat could practically hear the ice cream melting in the grocery bag. And then, when they got to the pool, Janie wasn't even in the front waiting for them. They waited a whole extra 5 minutes before she came out to the parking lot. In those 5 minutes, Bat's head got so itchy from the hat that he had to take it off again. "What took you so long?" Bat blurted when Janie got into the car at last. "Geez, Bat, don't yell," Janie said loudly. "You're yelling," Bat yelled back. "I'm not yelling," Janie said. "You're not yelling now," Bat said. "You were yelling before." Whatever, Bat, Janie said, and she rolled her eyes and crossed her arms, which hurt his feelings. Bat crossed his arms too, but because it was so hot, that was uncomfortable, so he uncrossed them. Everything okay? Mom asked Janie when they'd pulled out of the parking lot and onto the main road. No, said Janie. Do you want to talk about it? Mom asked. No, said Janie again. But then a minute later she said, Ezra always thinks he's funny. Ah, Mom said. I don't think Ezra is always funny, said Bat. Sometimes he's a mean tease. Janie sniffed. Mom looked at her in the rearview mirror. Did Ezra tease you, Janie? She asked. I don't want to talk about it, Janie said. But then, after the next red light, she said, I don't think it's weird that I like to use my camera to take pictures instead of my cell phone. I don't think it makes me stuck up. Is that what Ezra said? Mom asked. Janie nodded. I don't think it's weird, Bat said. I like your camera. That wasn't very nice of Ezra, Mom said. I don't want to talk about it, Janie said again. If you don't want to talk about it, Bat said, then why do you keep talking about it? You're not always nice either, Bat, said Janie. No one is always nice, Bat said. He didn't tell Janie that she had hurt his feelings. He just looked out at his window. The rest of the ride home was silent, except for the rush of air coming in through the windows, and when Mom pulled into the driveway and turned off the car, Janie jumped out and slammed her door. She slammed the door, Bat told Mom. I know, Bat, Mom said. She sighed and rubbed the spot right above her nose. I heard. And here's a picture of Bat and Janie in the car with their arms crossed. Using the illustration, you can tell that they are not happy right now. We're not supposed to slam doors, Bat said. That is true, Mom said, but sometimes we slam them anyway. Bat slid out of the back seat. His t-shirt felt glued to his back. Will you help me carry in the stuff from our errands? Mom asked. Why doesn't Janie have to help? Bat asked. He just wanted to go inside and change his shirt. He didn't want to be out in the hot sun for one more minute. Because Janie is having a hard day, Mom said. I'm having a hard day too, said Bat. My day has been harder than Janie's. I had to run errands, and the air conditioning is broken. And then we had to drive all the way to the pool instead of home. Okay, Bat, Mom said. We don't need to have an argument about who has the hardest day. I'll get the bags myself. You can go inside. Bat went inside. He went to his room and took off his sweaty t-shirt and put on a clean one. But he didn't feel better. He felt worse. Because part of him knew that he should have stayed outside to help his mom bring in all the errand stuff. Do you think that he should have stayed outside to help his mom? But then he heard the front door close, and he knew it was too late to go back out to help. Bat just stood in the center of his room. Then he heard a rustling sound. It was Thor, who was awake and who had come out of his nest in the corner of his pen when he heard Bat. He pressed his nose between the panels of the enclosure. Hey, little Thor, Bat cooed. Even if it was a bad day, he wanted to use a good voice with the skunk. He opened the gate and Thor shuffled out. Bat admired how thick and bristly his tail was, getting how shiny and clear his eyes looked and how plump and healthy his belly was. Thor came right up to Bat and pushed Bat's leg with his snout. Bat crouched down and scooped him up and then walked over to his bed. He lay down on his side facing the wall and made a little crook with his arm to cradle the skunk. For some reason that Bat couldn't name, he started to cry. Not a lot, but a little, and his body shook and tears rolled down his cheeks. Thor sniffled Bat's ear, his cheek, his nose. Bat closed his eyes. Thor's whiskers tickled Bat's face. His rough tongue brushed against Bat's skin, licking at the tears. Slowly, Bat stopped crying. Above Bat's head, the ceiling fan whirled around and around, circulating nice, cool air. His bed was soft and comfortable. When Bat's tears were dried, Thor turned in a little circle and tucked his head into the bend of Bat's elbow. Drowsy and perfectly comfortable, Bat and the skunk fell asleep together. And there they are sleeping. All right. Alright, so that's the end of chapter 20. So I will read chapter 21, and then the next chapter will be in the next video. Alright, chapter 21, 2 parts. Bat, where's Thor? Bat woke drowsily to the sound of Mom's voice from the doorway to his bedroom. He turned his head to see her standing there, looking worriedly at Thor's open enclosure. Shh, Bat whispered, not wanting to disturb the skunk. Still curled in his arms, the end of his tail tucked over his nose. He's right here. Mom came into the room and across to the bed, peering over Bat to see the sleeping skunk. Oh, she said, he's with you. We took a nap, Bat said. His arm was stiff and tingly from being in the same position for so long, but he didn't want to move it. My arm is asleep, he said. Mom sat down gently on the edge of the bed. She rested her hand on Bat's leg. My arm used to fall asleep when I would hold you or Janie in the same position for too long, she said. I never wanted to shift and take the chance of waking you up. I know what you mean, Bat said. They stayed there together, Thor sleeping, Bat and his mom watching him for a long time, as the sky outside the window changed from blue to dusky pink. Finally, Thor twitched his nose, stretched all 4 of his legs, and yawned, his pink tongue curling out from between 2 rows of fine white teeth. Then Bat rolled over and sat up. You had a long nap, little Thor, he cooed. Thor blinked open his eyes, and he looked perfectly content and happy to find himself in Bat's arms. I was sad, Bat told his mom, but Thor made me feel better. Bat stood and carried Thor to the enclosure and set him down. The skunk meandered over to his litter box and used it, then went to his water bowl for a nice long drink. As Thor drank, Bat went to the kitchen to get a scoop of the special food he and Mom had made a couple of days earlier, following a recipe Bat had found on the internet and with special supplements that Mom had ordered through the vet clinic. It was a smelly mix of ground turkey, brown rice, and egg, mixed together with the supplements. They kept it in a plastic container in the refrigerator. Thor must have smelled his supper, because when Bat went back into his room, the skunk scurried over to his enclosure's gate and paced excitedly. Okay, Bat said in his soothing voice. Settle down. He set Thor's dish on the plastic placemat Mom had let him take into his room, opened the enclosure's gate, and watched as Thor dug into his meal. Mom was still there sitting on Bat's bed. You look happy, she said. Bat nodded. It's satisfying to watch him eat, he said. It's the best feeling. Mom laughed. That's how I always felt when you or Janie would finish a whole plate of food. Bat didn't like to think about what would happen when Thor was returned to the wild. Sometimes he started to imagine it, and he'd picture Thor's black and white tail disappearing into a bush, and then his eyes would fill with tears and his heart would feel like it was made of sharp splinters. Then he would do whatever it took to get the image out of his mind. He would let himself chew on his shirt, or he would rock back and forth, or he would kick the wall by his door over and over again. Not really hard. Not hard enough to hurt the wall, just hard enough to make his toes sore so that he could think about the pain in his foot instead. He pictured it again now, Thor disappearing from him, and he pulled the collar of his shirt into his mouth and began to rock back and forth. Mom stood up from the bed and came over to Bat. She stood close to Bat and she opened her arms, which was her way of saying that if he wanted a hug, she was there to hug him. Part of Bat didn't want anyone to touch him. That part of him felt like it was fighting with the part of him that very much did want a hug. I love you, Bat, Mom said softly, and then the part of him that wanted the hug was stronger, and he stepped into her arms. And here's a picture of Bat feeding the skunk and Mom sitting on the edge of his bed. All right, and that's the end of chapter 21. I'll see y'all tomorrow for chapter 22.